Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our keynote speakers, expert moderators, panelists, and solutions sponsors for participating in this year's Insight Jam Live. This has been a big year with the launch of the InsightJam.com community site and the amazing growth of the Insight Jam YouTube channel, which now has over 500,000 subscribers. Much of this success is tied directly to the video events, podcasts, and panel discussions we have been producing, and none of that would be possible without the thoughtful participation of the many IT professionals who are generously sharing their expert insights for this latest jam. We are building Insight Jam to be a place to celebrate enterprise technology with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy this event.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hello and welcome to the last panel of our cybersecurity coverage during Insight Jam Live, 4 days of thought leadership. My name is Jonathan Paula. I'm the Multimedia Director here at Solutions Review, and I am excited to bring in that last panel as we discuss securing the AI pipeline, safeguarding information, and mitigating risk. We've assembled another great group of people from around the globe today to talk about it. Mark, David, Emre, Jean, Katie, and Veronica, thank you for joining me. Let's start off with some introductions. Mark, you've agreed to moderate, so I'll let you go first. 30 seconds or less. Tell the audience a bit about yourself and your work history.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'm President and CEO of Contoral. We are the largest independent provider of information governance, privacy, and AI governance consulting services, working with more than 30% of the Fortune 500. We help companies develop strategies, build policies, processes, and execute AI governance programs to ensure that they can use generative AI in a compliant, defensible, safe way.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here. Next up, alphabetically, David. And I think you're on mute. Happens to everybody.
Never ceases to amaze me. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Carroll. I am the Associate Director for the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, and I lead the mission engineering teams that deliver national level cyber protection programs like the National Cyber Protection System, Einstein, the Cyber Analytic Data System, and some of our classified environments. And we are heavily focused on machine-on-machine cyber defense, and AI is obviously an incredible part of that. Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Emre, over to you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. This is Emre. I'm the Deputy CISO for Dremio. I focus on all things security here at Dremio. I've been here about 3 years. Built and ran the security program and the team related with it. I have a heavily security breaker background. Here at Dremio, we enable the businesses to create and consume data products, mostly powered by Apache Iceberg. We love to accelerate AI and analytics initiatives and dramatically reduce the costs for our customers. Yeah, I'm excited.
Excellent. Appreciate your time. Let's go over to Jean next. Welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean Yu, CEO and co-founder of Reach Security. Glad to be here. As just a practitioner who's has been doing these kind of things for the last 30 years, started my own company. We provide Overwatch program for a lot of our clients globally. Happy to be here and provide some input into what you guys are talking about today.
Appreciate that. Katie, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm Katie Shilton. I'm a professor in the College of Information at the University of Maryland in College Park. We teach and do research in information technology, and specifically my area is data and technology ethics. So I think a lot about ethical issues in AI, and I'm part of a new institute with GW, University of Maryland, and Morgan State University called TRAILS, which stands for Trustworthy AI in Law and Society. So happy to be talking about these things today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Canton. I'm an AI cybersecurity and data privacy attorney. I help clients deal with some of their the most challenging aspects of compliance and regulatory investigations. I've also write the LinkedIn newsletter called the Canton Reports, and I've co-founded a company called Optimized Leverage, focusing on educating young professionals and current professionals interested in getting into AI, cybersecurity, and data privacy.
Excellent. Thank you again, one and all, for being here. Looking forward to the discussion, but since I'm not qualified to have it myself, I'll leave that to you, qualified experts. Mark, you're going to moderate, so I'll let you kick things off with our first topic.
Yeah, let's start with a really interesting area, which is I think we're through the brand new phase of utilizing generative AI at this point. Not for everybody, but as an industry. And it's interesting when we talk about, risk mitigation, data integrity has quickly come to the surface as an issue that a lot of organizations realize they at least need to manage and or pay attention to. David, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the best practices for ensuring data quality and integrity throughout the AI pipeline, all the way from ingestion to deployment?
Thanks, Mark. That's a great question, because in my, in our cybersecurity world, the data provenance and the data lineage is incredibly important to being accurate. With our threat mitigation, threat detection. I think where we start and where we've really been in this data integrity focus for a number of years now, is it all starts with the proper governance frameworks, making sure that everyone understands the rules of the road, what is proper, what is not, what is how data is classified, where it is derived from, and what its motion is to convert to information, which obviously it helps us convert it to action. We also use a number of tools in the data integrity space for automated validation and cleansing. Again, when you're working with AI, especially high-speed models, extract, transform, and load becomes not just a mechanical thing, but an assurance that your models and that your answers are coming in, with a reasonable amount of fidelity. Running a big software shop, on my side, strict version control, not endeavoring into self-afflicted wounds or forgetting that that proper software engineering discipline. Putting things out in slow versions until you ramp up to full capability also ensures data integrity. It's not something everyone always thinks of, but you'll start to see data errors and things like that early on, and it's easier to mitigate them then. And then end-to-end monitoring, of course. Anomaly detection, I'll let some of my colleagues get into that. We do a great amount of that, but it sounds like we have some folks who are really probably on the forefront of that. The last thing is, especially in the national security realm, secure data storage and access control. You will read our CISA advisories and find out that we're very concerned about access control and secure by design every day. Don't need to put that out there or plug that. And then, of course, honestly, it's just day-to-day consistency, reliability, making sure that we audit on a regular basis. Those all, not just for, in the data integrity realm is bringing it into a different thing, not just the accuracy of the data, but, the understanding of making sure that we understand the roots of bias, the roots of problems, and even in some cases, I hate to say, the intentional misuse of the data that confounds our models.
Okay, Emery, what do you think? You spent a lot of time thinking about this issue too.
Yeah, that's correct. I want a little bit more to talk about why data integrity is important. I think that's the core principle for this, because it's important because we want to be able to trust the AI model that we created or somebody else created. I think that's the core principle of security and also integrity here is the trust of it, right? So that we can build this trust. I think I kind of see this in like three different parts. There's the collection part of it, there's the validation part of it, and there's the cleaning part of it. Because it's kind of like a vicious circle that we have to build, and so that data collection is kind of give us a building block for a strong foundation of that AI data that we're gonna probably put in front of somebody or another AI, right? I think the credibility of the source that the data that we collected in, and especially if we're gonna put this in front of public, the diversity and representativeness, ethical considerations, right? And those are also extremely important from a data collection perspective. From a data validation perspective, I think internally we got to build not only just technology products, we also need to build processes that does quality checks, does some sort of verification, and then especially again, like if it's going to be a public one, it's going to be a bias audit. Is this biased? And it's not just, you know, when we think about bias, we think about maybe human bias, but it's, I don't know, if you're let's say creating an AI model that does logistics, like it's going to give these logistics to a self-driving vehicle, and if you collect your data from one or a couple of drivers, that they have an awesome donut shop stop, that's going to be biased through that donut shop stop. Maybe it's not the optimal route, but it's, you know, bias comes in a different way too, right? So not just human bias. You got to test with real world scenarios. That's the way you can detect these. And data cleaning, right? And if you have a junk data set that you don't clean up, that's not going to provide good value at the end of the day. It might get stale. It might depend on what kind of data you do, right?
So you talk about real world. Gene, for you, you know, you spend a lot of time. How are you addressing this, or how are you seeing other organizations address these?
Well, how we address it is one part of the problem, because as a threat intelligence company, we are collecting massive amounts of data that is outside of most people's firewalls. And as we're collecting anything from social media to dark web and all these things, you know, we have a very almost like Ford assembly line process in actually detailing the whole process. And as like David mentioned before, it's the irony, right? I mean, I think we talked about this in 2000 when we're talking about data warehouses. And I think the same methodology, same process in which we get the data, to process the data, transfer the data, all this process hasn't really changed. Now we are adding this whole AI components to it. So for us, you know, as a former data center operator and, you know, using data warehouses in the past, it's nothing really changed. Like, and when I say technologically, but I think when I look at it from our customers, you know, because we work, well, I think I have a different perspective, because what we do see is from our client is that they are acquiring massive amounts of data, not just from their own internal infrastructure, but anything from ad tech to dark web to financial, or anything that they could get a handle, so that they could actually build models that is at a scale for like nation state and everything else.
Katie, I know you've spent a lot of time on this particular topic. What do you think?
Yeah, this is near and dear to my heart, so I'm happy to hear my colleagues speaking about it. So, I mean, data and the integrity of data used in AI models is fundamental to understanding potential biases, exactly as Emery said, as well as other risks. As we start to talk about the sort of life cycle of AI and thinking about mitigating risks, I mean, it all sort of starts with data. But the challenges, and actually I have a question for my colleagues and sort of how they're seeing this play out. But, you know, data documentation is so critical to understanding data integrity. So where did this data come from? No data is neutral. No data, you know, it's all created about humans by humans, and all of that documentation is so important. But generative AI products, especially large language models, large image models, tend to break that integrity chain, right? You may be using a model that was trained on data. You have no idea what was in that data. The whole point is that there's a lot of it, right? And things like data sheets for data sets, just which are, you know, best practice in the sort of classifier world of AI, are not necessarily best practices in generative AI. And so I'm wondering how people are addressing that tension in their own work and in their own consultancies.
Veronica, do you want to either opine on this or answer that?
Yeah, I think Katie, those are fantastic points, and I'm glad you brought up that question. So, for in terms of thinking of biases and controlling where the data comes from a legal perspective, excuse me. Now, one of the things that I recommend for everyone is talk to your legal teams so that you can have those conversations about where the data is coming from, whether there was initial documented consent of the collection of data, if the vendors from whom you're getting the data that you're going to use for your algorithms, excuse me, are, that the vendors actually have the documentation, so that should there be an issue down the line, and again, as an attorney, I think of compliance, right? So keeping your company safe so that you can say, here's the math, here are all the documents that we have, here are all the steps we took to understand where the data came from, but also, to Kate's point, addressing where potential biases can be identified, because we're dealing with structured data, unstructured data. We're dealing with, different types of algorithms that are making up the different products and services. So not only is it important for me as a legal person, but I think it should be important to open up those communications. And sometimes legal doesn't seem approachable, but really, if you reach out to legal to educate legal on where the data comes from, what you're doing with it, and assessing what the legal framework is, it's easier to tackle that at the beginning of the stage of product or service development versus getting down the line, dealing with a regulatory agency, and then having to talk to an attorney so that you can address those issues when they're hitting the fan.
I like what you're saying, and I'm going to just add on the smart comments by my other panelists on this. We tend to break the problem into two different areas when it comes to data integrity and data quality. One of the problems, it's harder to solve, which is if you're using, a closed LLM, what's the data provenance, other things like that. And that is something I think we definitely need to be mindful, especially in terms of biases, other things like that. But we obviously have less control if we're using OpenAI or Anthropic or pick your favorite large language model. I think what's more important for organizations is when they're using generative AI, specifically with retrieval augmented generation, when they're feeding the information in generative AI, there's two parts of the data quality part of it we need to look at. One is, do we have an effective data security classification policy, and are we feeding the right data into that? Are we making sure that we're not giving proprietary or personal information or other information we don't intend to feed to our large language model? The other one is going to sound a little tactical or maybe even a little pedestrian, but a lot of times this comes down to a basic records management problem. Too often organizations have lots of different copies of data, and some of them are good copies and some of them are not good copies. And if we're going to want to teach our large language model with RAG some of this information, I think fundamentally that goes back to do you have an up-to-date records program, and are you enforcing it, especially for the structured and unstructured data? And that's a big part of it. And so organizations, we see a lot of mistakes where they're feeding that into that. Which sort of goes to my next questions. How can organizations identify, evaluate, and mitigate the risks associated with this decision-making, domain, trust, and compliance? I mean, there's this whole, it's inherently a complex world out there. David, what are you seeing with organizations now where they're trying to manage the risk, or can we? Let me ask, can we manage the risk?
Well, I mean, we must. It's sort of an imperative to a certain extent. So I don't think it's an either or. It's a do our best and keep continuing toward progress. We have a lot of ethical AI standards coming out from my department, Homeland Security, my division or my agency, which is CISA. I think I wanted to talk really quickly about being prudent, because in a lot of cases, for maybe in mine and Jean's particular vertical, we don't have the luxury of time. And our adversaries are moving as fast as we are with these models. So as we bring the data in, my biggest, practically right now, my biggest armament is connection agreements and data usage agreements. What I'd like to get to eventually to balance that regulatory compliance, because our work is all built on trust at CISA. We are not a regulator. We are not law enforcement. We are not, we're here to help in a true sense. So, that really is almost all voluntary. And so we can't fail at it. We can't improperly use the data. We can't put out a model that, consider, some of the threats you've seen. Some of these impact very large corporations and U.S. interests, as well as international interests that we don't want to interdict for no reason. And I think balancing that, first of all, is the practicality. When I talk to our AI officers and things like that, we can overemphasize because all of it, from my perspective, a lot of this comes back to copyright, propriety, privacy. Those are great things. But in our case, for example, I try to argue, well, most of our stuff is computer to computer. And the last time I checked, a machine does not have privacy rights yet. And so, so we get into those discussions, and then you take it up a level. But I think we try to get it all done at the connection level first right now. Where would I like to see it go? I'd love to see, tools come out and technologies, and I'm starting to see them in some of the science and technology realms where we have dynamic driver tree analysis. So we can determine the lineage and protect the data, through almost like through machine level policies. It's a little bit of a rabble here and there, but I've seen it. We do it for data delivery, as we've talked about. We've been doing this for years. As Gene said, this isn't new. It's adding this other layer because, like you said, if you don't actually have it up to the point where it goes into the model, you have no way of expecting, or it's almost like it goes into a black space and then it comes out and you have to kind of decompose it again and figure out, did it violate anything?
Okay, so those are the models. Emery, I'm going to ask you now, we have the models, but can we identify those risks today? Or do we need to put on the brakes? Or what are you seeing out there?
So all of the conversations is reminding me early days of web-based applications, right? And then it's kind of like whatever we give it to them, and they're going to do whatever we want them to do. It's just a little bit less deterministic right now. It used to be super deterministic. You knew what was going to happen. This maybe not, right? So I think we build all these controls. Took us some time. It took us a good 5 to 10 years to figure out, and then another longer time to actually everybody to adopt this. But we killed some of those risks right there and there in the spot, right? And then I think that's the approach that we're going to take, and that's doable. I don't see doom and gloom scenario there. I think we can even use the beast itself to do that.
So you think it's
yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, go ahead, Gene. I'm ready. I'm sorry. I'm just going to hand off to Gene for that. But
yeah. So these risks could be coming from the model, or this risk could be coming from the human who uses that model or abuses that model, right? And then you can use the model itself. Like if you're worried about a prompt injection, you can tell the model certain criteria, only certain, like, answer me this. Somebody's going to break that too, right? And then the more they break it, the more and I think we're going to adopt people who are going to break it, like we adopted red teams and everything. So and that's going to be the pendulum swing, and we're gonna get to that.
So, Gene, let's suppose you're advising a senior executive, which you do. How do they achieve that trust that this is going to be safe, compliant, accurate?
Well, I think most cybersecurity professionals and data professionals don't do a good job in explaining what it is and how it's going to, and ultimately explaining the outcome of the AI. Because let's be realistic, and I think Katie could attest to this, there aren't that many AI experts in the world, period. So everybody could say they have AI expertise, but I mean, let's just be realistic. I mean, I go to different continents and I see factories of students and ministries, governments setting up a massive, massive shop just to focus on AI. And let me be very blunt. There is no guardrails on those countries because they want to use the AI for economic advantage, for national advantage, and so forth. So it's great that we as a country, as US Nexus, doing the right thing. But, there's what we see outside is a whole different ballgame. So,
Katie, are we going to get in trouble by playing by the rules?
I mean, yeah, that's a hard question, Gene, that you have posed. I'm going to take the other sort of tack, which is to say, when I think about mitigating risk in AI, I think one of the biggest challenges is that risks are really contextual in this space. And so, I actually think we have really good ideas of what the major risks associated with AI are, right? Like we understand fairly well the affordances of these systems, what they're good at, what they're not good at. So we actually have like good general knowledge, I think, of risks with these systems. And what we struggle with and where I think we need to spend a lot of our energy is, what are the risks in healthcare? How is that different from in banking, right? How is that different from in the security industry, right? So that I think is where like the really hard stuff comes in identifying risk, but also like as an answer to this. It's not an answer to the problem of national competitiveness, sorry, but it is an answer I think to like what do we do about it, right? It's like, all right, focus on your context, right? Yeah. What is it that's risky here? And that starts to give us a set of answers about how to mitigate those risks.
And Veronica, I can see
I
you
love that
thinking
answer.
the
Yes.
legal risk, the other risks. I mean, how do we deal with this?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I mean, I love coffee with my oxygen. I drink a lot of coffee. So there's risk in that, right? There's risk in drinking a hot beverage. We can find risk in everything we do in life. So to Katie's point, we need to focus not only in industries that have high risk impact on human lives, but also within companies, look at the high risk departments, high risk services, processes, procedures that will have the highest level of impact in terms of the resources that are invested, whether it's legal in-house, right? In-house counsel, hiring outside counsel, having your technical teams connecting with those teams, the time that's invested, because as much as I want to talk to everyone in every company about their AI algorithms and compliance with GDPR and the right of explanation, right? And all the other different laws that are already in place and the ones that are coming up, there's lack of time and lack of resources. So categorizing and making a list of those high risk areas for the actual company itself, but also at the industry at large. So I love Katie's points on that.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And we have the benefit of working both with in-house counsel, with our clients' technology teams, with the compliance, I mean, all the different business units. And on one hand, we don't think that you're going to be able to stop the need to use generative AI. I'm going to use U.S. corporations as an example. The competitive advantage is too great to just sit back and wait for these problems to be worked out. But on the other hand, there's really risk. We're big believers that you got to trust your process. Let's put up the right processes. And there's a number of new processes we have to put there, whether it's, looking at safety processes or looking at your data quality processes, other things like that, to be able to do that. And then we want to evaluate them over time. But I think some of the biggest risk is we're sort of analysis by paralysis, that we don't do anything. Or what oftentimes will happen is the technology teams may go ahead and be ready to deploy without thinking about the risk components, or they almost get ready and then also the risk components come up, and that's when organizations say, whoa, we better take a look at this. So early in and often, developing those processes and trusting your processes and obviously being able to update them. But we're going to have to deal with this risk issue, and compliance is nothing new. And as Gene said, this is like web security. I mean, it's some of the same issues, but we know this stuff. We just need to apply it to a different technology. All right, and I'm going to go the other way around. With emerging regulations around AI use, what proactive measures can enterprise take to ensure their AI pipelines remain compliant without hindering innovation? So, Veronica, I'm going to go back to you to say, we obviously have new and existing, we have a number of new compliance rules around artificial using generative AI. Most of them have to do with privacy. But how do organizations make sure that they're compliant, and how do you prevent that from getting in the way of actually really needing to use this stuff? Veronica?
So I have a three-pronged approach. First, it needs to start from the bottom in terms of messaging from the CEO and leadership, right? That these are things that are priority and that need to be prioritized by the different departments.
Do you think the CEO and leadership are in tune with these? I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think they're always in tune with those? Or do you have to be proactive and ask them?
You have to be proactive. You can't be scared. If you are an employee that knows of a potential risk, you should be bringing, or potential issue or development, you should be bringing that up to the different teams that you're part of. And so, again, starting with the leadership and the communication, having that communication. The second piece I would say is making sure that you are, operationalizing and documenting your compliance efforts. Because again, there's risk in everything. So what you want to do is document, operationalize as much as you can. You can't just have a pretty policy. I love writing those, but if you are not operationalizing it within your company, then when you have an inquiry from an agency, you're not able to demonstrate that you had your best efforts based on the resources that you had available or the knowledge that you had available. And the last thing is, what you were talking about of companies being very close to launching a product and then having to halt because of a potential regulatory issue, involving legal around from the beginning. And I know legal is known for stopping things, but really, if you educate legal in what you're trying to do as a business, the financial impact it can have on the business, and how you need their support, legal is more likely than not to look for ways that you can move forward with your product development, launches, and anything else related to that, while still keeping in mind CPA, the FTC, GDPR, and any other regulation that's coming up. And one of the simple ways, and I say simple and I'll put that in quotes, is having a data protection impact assessment and incorporating AI into those DPIAs.
Okay, Katie, you know, what makes this whole area interesting from a compliance perspective, it's moving very, very quickly. And obviously, Europe wants to take the lead in AI governance, and that's a whole nother debate. We won't go down there whether they will or not. Obviously, we have a new administration coming in. How do organizations sort of stay abreast of staying compliant on these risks?
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's hard because, as you say, it's moving fast. It feels like it's moving. I mean, as fast as policy ever moves, right? Which is not actually that fast. But so one of the things that I recommend right now as a really concrete place to start in terms of ensuring that you're compliant with best practices is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is a federal agency that develops standards, has put forth a risk management framework for AI. It's called an RMF, risk management framework. And it's a really, I think, pretty elegant way of thinking through social and technical risks together at many phases of the AI lifecycle. And so this is because NIST is like CISA is not a regulatory body, right? You don't have to follow what they said. It's voluntary, but documenting your processes and working through the risk management framework is a really good way to show that you are sort of demonstrating best practice as we know it today, which I think is one of the best things you can do as regulation changes, right? As an organization, is to say, like, we are in good faith. We are trying to proceed with best practices until we are told, by our lawyers otherwise.
I agree. The comment on the policy.
Yeah,
I think
if I
the
can
worst
briefly add.
Sure.
Sorry, if I may briefly add, absolutely agree with that, and it's something that regulators definitely pay attention to.
We always say that it's worse to have a policy you don't follow than no policy whatsoever. That's really going to get you in trouble if you have something that sits on the shelf. Gene, have you ever been in a situation where you're waking up one day and saying, "Hey, this is great, except I'm not sure it's compliant"? And how do you sort of message some of those, especially for organizations which are under a lot of pressure to get this generative AI app or environment going?
That's like a daily thing, because we are also a data provider. So it's a thematic thing where we need to constantly worry about whether it's legal, whether it's a good idea, or whether or not it's something that we could actually use in our products. I think, how do I word this? When I wake up every day, especially looking at what we're doing and what other people are doing, there is a lot to be said about what's academic versus reality. And, when I speak with our customers as well, or in general, it's always about I always try to explain to them, data equals knowledge equals intelligence equals power. And some of the motivator that it engages some individuals within company to, let's say, utilize the data for, AI for wrong use, or what insight do they get and what are they going to do with it? I think I guess for me, because I'm in the front line all the time and hearing about all this and some good and the bad, I have a very obviously, opaque response on a lot of these things.
Hey, Ray, are we being smart from a technology perspective? I mean, is this not so much of a compliance issue? Is this really in part going back to the technology?
Technology and processes, right? It's not just technology. Technology will, oftentimes I see myself designing processes for overuse of technology or underuse of technology, right? But one good thing about this whole regulation thing is, hey, wait, I have other regulations that I have to follow too. It's not the first time. I know this game. So again, I'm going to go back to the same thing. We've done this before. I mean, we have other regulatory bodies that we have to make happy, right? And then we have to follow certain standards. And then I hope you have a department that deals with that. If you don't, this is the perfect opportunity to build one and then run with those requirements. And then I'm a firm believer that the more you build these controls, even for yourself, right, for your sake, I think they almost 120% overlap with with actual regulatory requirements. And then these are good things to have. And also regulations want that too. And just build those, and then you'll be fine. I'm a firm believer that if you're secure, you're most of the time compliant. Like it's that's kind of similar to that.
David, is it fair to say that if you follow some of the risk models you've been talking about, that's naturally going to lead to compliance, or do we need to look at compliance separately?
Interesting question, and I fully support my NIST cousins up the road there in Gaithersburg. And I've done work. I've not always been CIS. I've been in and out of government, so I've been on the regulatory side, financial institutions, large software organizations, cloud organizations. I think that it's the best thing to put your back up against when it comes to proving that you are trying to do due diligence, right? And then, does it ensure security? I don't know that RMF by itself does. It is the guidepost that gets you there. There is work that needs to be done, and so the only thing I would say is it's a work in progress. An example would be, our common enumerated vulnerabilities. The value there, if you actually follow some of the standards and you follow the risk management framework, is you get to resolution of security events faster. In some cases, a magnitude faster. I can tell you this: if you watch along with what we're doing on the CISA side with Secure by Design, it's all about getting you from the RMF through to something that actually is functionally fit and will please your regulatory and your legal staff. So I don't think that just the standards and the documentation get you there. As I will quote Dr. Ron Ross at NIST years ago when I heard him speak. Compliance never defended a damn thing, but I think it is the best basis for understanding and for common lexicon. So when you're talking to customers, you're talking to constituents, you're talking to your regulators, you all speak a common language. That means everything.
One of the things that we remind our clients is that compliance is an inherently imperfect process. There's no such thing in the world of privacy and now in the world of AI governance of being perfectly compliant. One of the big debates we see the regulators having, I had a long conversation with the SEC about this, is do we really need new rules, new compliance requirements for generative AI, or do we just need to beef up the existing rules? And I'm not sure the world's regulatory community has really addressed that. We know certain, like Europe is obviously going more towards the former for new rules, but we'll see what happens with other organizations. But within that, we think one of the most important things is we always use the term reasonable good faith efforts. We're trying to do the right thing. We're looking at the rules. We're working to implement it. We're testing it. We're auditing it. We're monitoring it. Are we perfect? No. And when we find mistakes, we're remediating those mistakes. And too often, I think we sometimes don't do anything because it feels overwhelming. And remember, these are inherently imperfect. But generally, if you try and do the right thing and you follow these processes, we think you're going to be much less risk and much safer for that. We're almost at the top 40 minutes. I'm going to go through our panelists, and I want you to if there's one take home that you want people to talk about or think about from this whole area of really the safeguarding information integrity and algorithmic risk. And I'm going to go in a slightly different order. I'm going to go down and across. Gene, what's the one thing, if people remember this presentation today, what's the one take home you want them to take home? And you're on mute. We've never done that ourselves.
For people that is listening to this who are responsible or accountable for building out AI, I think they need to think about investing more on the people, having the right talents. Forget about the technology, because technology we could figure out. But I think the most important part is all of this securing compliance is great, but it needs to be done by hiring the right people and adding more people, because we don't have enough, I think, experts like Katie's and the Veronica's, Emery's, and the Davids in every organization to compartmentalize this entire thing. And it's, again, we hear about it all the time, like invest back in IT. It's not about IT. It's about putting the money to the people. And I think that's where the real investment needs to happen.
Is it about funding the people, which I agree with you very much, or is it about funding, of which the people's part of it?
Funding, but most importantly, adding more staff to understand what AI is, what to do with it, and what you're going to get out of it.
All right, Katie. Well, you spent a lot of time on this exact area, and there's a lot of topics. But if I'm limited in my memory, as I sometimes am, what's the one thing you want me to remember about what's important to take home for me?
Jean totally stole my answer, which is that whose job is this, right? And I think for organizations to really focus on like making sure that they have somebody whose job this is, who has the some expertise, and that expertise. I mean, we talked a little bit about how there's not enough AI expertise out there right now, but you know what? There is lots of data professionals, right? And data professionals are excellent. There's lots of cybersecurity
Are they always the right people, or is that part of it?
In many organizations, they may be, right? They may not be the right person, depending on which, compliance function you're worried about or which risk management function you're worried about. But if you're worried about data integrity, they're good people, right? To pull on. And so trying to figure out who those people are. I mean, I will say in the academy, we are trying to train them up fast, right? We're trying to respond to these workforce needs. But I do think there are folks out there, who have these expertise in various ways or have developed them.
Is it a different skill set, or is it just fine tuning the existing data governance, information governance skills?
I think it's fine tuning in a lot of cases with, some additional the AI has especially generative AI has its own risks, as we've talked about. But those are things that can be learned. Perhaps you bring in a consultant, or there's like ways to do that. But I think like looking for that expertise in your own organization or adjacent is doable and is worth doing.
Okay, Veronica, you're obviously
our new grads need jobs too, right? But
well, that's a good thing.
But yes, but I think those
good to promote that. Veronica, you're obviously thinking of putting your legal hat on. What do we need to remember?
So I'll give big picture communication, right? Tech needs to communicate with legal and vice versa. Learning how to communicate the different lexicon that we use, right? I've taken training on AI because my clients need me to know the acronyms they're throwing at me in meetings versus me saying, I'm sorry, can you hold on? What does that mean? Right? I need to myself empower and understand what my clients are working on and what they need. So the communication piece is huge. Communication, tech to legal, legal to tech, communication in writing, policies, procedures, communication from the top to bottom, bottom up. Communication from companies to regulators, when there's an inquiry, making sure that that communication is clear and concise and informative. So my key takeaway that I want everyone to take is communication is just key in every aspect of everything we do. And the most important piece I would say is communication with our with consumers.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Do you think that there's not enough talking today amongst the different groups?
I think it's challenging. I think people are scared of legal. So when I worked in-house, I reached out to different departments and they would say, I wanted to attend a meeting and they would say, what's going on? And I would say, oh, no, I'm just curious. I want to know what you're doing. Oh, but why? No, really, I'm just curious. I'm here to talk about coffee and your tech. And so I made it a point to be a little funny, but people are scared to talk to legal because they think they're going to get in trouble. And as legal, I encourage my colleagues in legal to be curious and to reach out to people before there's an issue so that when they go to talk to the different teams, they can say, hey, we talked about ABC. I was thinking about XYZ. Let's connect.
I hear you. Anyway, what do we bring? What do we be smart about? What's the one thing if I'm going to think about this?
Yeah, I think if you're still scared of the beast, don't be, because these are known things, right? Like your data is in S3 bucket, your code is in GitHub repository, but you don't own them. They're in somebody else's cloud, right? Somebody else's computer. And this is going to be similar. Your data, if you're building a model in OpenAI, it's going to be in OpenAI's environment, and we built controls around it. And then if you are providing a service or a product using these, and then again, you got to build controls around. And a prompt injection is, to be honest, the defending is not so different than a SQL injection, right? And then you were looking at the input, you were looking at the output. If you don't have that type of control, then it's hard to depend. So, and from a regulatory perspective, I think again, same thing. Don't be scared, because there has been regulations, there will be regulations, and as long as you build the right thing, you're always acing those regulations. And then it's kind of like I look at this whenever see a new regulation, I look at flying an airplane. It says it should be done safely and it's risky, and you have checklists. And if the pilot only focuses on the checklist, is going to crash the airplane. Or there's an emergency, there's a checklist, and if it's in their head, they'll apply it, they'll do it, they'll get away with it, right? So I think the takeaway is trust your experts, and then have experts in house, and then build those controls, and that's not that hard.
And do you think the experts?
Can I briefly chime in?
No, please.
Sorry,
Veronica.
may I briefly chime in on the checklist? I love that you bring up checklists. I think it's part of the tool belt that we use, but it's also helpful to do the activities outside of the checklist and not get so focused on I'm doing all of these things, and this should be enough. So thank you for bringing that up. I love that.
I love that too. So let me ask you a tough question. We're all going to a panel of experts. Do the experts always know this? I mean, if you hire the experts or you bring them in, is that going to be enough, or how much do you need to do your own original thinking? Emery.
I think trust your people, right? I mean, that's why you hire them. And having hired, I mean, I don't think anybody would wake up and say, I'm going to hire a bad person, right? Or I don't think anybody is going to wake up and I'm going to do something really stupid today, right? And that's like figure out what is missing, and then once you invest on that type of things, it could be knowledge, it could be time. This person could be like, people make mistakes when they have 20 things to do, right? Or people make mistakes because they don't know that, like they don't know what to do. So those two problems are the most common ones, and if you focus on those, AI is nothing different than that, right? If you give them enough expertise on, well, maybe you shouldn't put intranet data to a product that is facing public. Oh, I didn't know that, right? So that's as simple as that. Yeah.
Okay, David, you've given us a lot of good information. Can you distill us down a little bit in terms of what's like the one thing I want to remember?
I'm going to go a little bit. It's the holiday season, so I would say don't take the joy out of it. I try to tell everybody, we're always the bigger cognitive machine, right? And even in the government, branding matters. I changed my InfoSec team, which was highly compliance oriented recently, to MLSecOps, not because they're all experts, but because it gives them a North Star to shoot toward, and it gives them excitement, and it gives them the impetus to learn. And so declaring intent sometimes, and then supporting your team, supporting your organization with a little bit of joy and intent, because it's a fascinating technology. It's a game changer. And so I look from the innovation side as well, and try to empower my teams, because especially on the civil service side, it can become we are very, very heavy on regulations and oversight, as you all read the news every day. But if you look at it and you go, wow, this thing can do something pretty incredible, and then you start to tell those stories, I think you should do that. I think you should do it at every opportunity, because it takes down, they're getting inundated with all this information, wondering if they're doing the right thing. It's the best thing to tell them that they should explore that, and not just wait to be told the right path. There are dozens of right paths at this point.
And I'm sure that all of us, the six of us, could fill many hours of these webcasts talking about all the things that could go wrong. The bad things can happen with generative AI. Do you ever worry that we spend so much time on that we're turning off the real benefit of generative AI, that we need to sometimes refocus, saying it can be bad, but it can be good? I mean, do you worry about that?
Me? Yeah, of course. I actually make it a running joke with my colleagues in threat hunt and vulnerability management. I just walk by every now and then, go, when are we going to start calling them cyber prompt analysts? And then they want to slap me. So it's a very funny thing. But yeah, I do worry about it. Don't stifle the innovation, because that again, our adversaries are doing it for a different reason. We need to do it, and we need to provide in my case the best effort and the best. And the best products back, and the best advice back to the federal, state, local, tribal, in a lot of cases, 140 folks around the world. So you shouldn't reserve that energy. You shouldn't, and I don't want the regulation to stifle it. I want, I work on the engineering side, but I am, the system owner. So I am responsible for compliance, and no one, in my case, likes to go downtown. So it's, if you take joy in it, you also get high quality out of folks when they are personally invested. I have 250 federal employees, and I get email all the time from them telling me how, they saw this article, or what do you think of this? I just look at it as an opportunity for innovation and for collaboration as well.
And a brief editorial comment. I am very pleased to see how the U.S. regulators are approaching this versus other regulators out there. And what I see so far, my personal opinion is that I think that's a much more balanced approach. And just to round it off, probably the one thing I want to leave people with is, we're talking about new problems and new challenges and new risk, and obviously new technology, although it's not really terribly new. Parts of it have been around for many years, as we know, but we have certain muscles we've seen these types of problems before, whether it's, we say, when the internet came out, or other compliance issues, we've seen this stuff for years. And so a lot of times, if we recognize these problems, how do we apply new technology? How do we adopt it compliantly? How do we use it productively? We've done these things before. Now it's different, but it's not. And so I guess my take home is, understand this stuff, go through this, go look broad through all the issues. Not only look at the legal and regulatory compliance, look at the defensibility, look at the risks, look at the internal data protection aspects of it. Obviously, look at the safety, accuracy, and correctness components of it. And last but not least, is look at the ethical components of it. But I bet you, as you go look at that, you're going to say, I know this. I've been here before. And you'll be able to solve a lot of these problems with existing skill sets you have. I think the trick is asking the right questions up front and taking a big picture view, and then being able to do that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jonathan.
Right on. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, the rest of our panelists. That was a great discussion to listen in on for the last 50 minutes or so. Before we wrap up, though, I'd love to invite each of you an opportunity to promote your company, your product, your LinkedIn profile, a book, a podcast, wherever you'd like to send the audience. We'll start in counterclockwise order with Veronica, and you are on mute.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure being here. I'm Veronica Canton. I'm AI, cybersecurity, data privacy attorney. You can find me on LinkedIn. I publish the Canton Cyber Privacy and AI Reports. This year, I published 3 series on those exact subjects for the reason that I was talking about. Communication is key. And there's so many people who don't have the foundational knowledge of those areas that I wanted to get that out there. Also, as a way to learn, relearn, and share my enthusiasm for the work that I do. And launching programs to educate young professionals and new professionals, or just older professionals, on these subjects as well. And those are materials that I will share on my LinkedIn profile. So look forward to connecting with attendees and sharing and supporting each other's journeys.
Absolutely. Very well said. Katie, over to you. What would you like to promote?
So I would like to promote the institute that I mentioned earlier, Trails. It's the web address is trails.umd.edu. We have a public symposium coming up in February that will be on trustworthy AI and workforce issues. We have a mailing list. We have a way for individuals who are interested to join as associates or as affiliates, as well as organizations. So if trustworthy AI in law and society is something you want to learn more about, something you're interested in, head to the Trails website.
Thank you very much for being here. Gene, would you like to plug?
Well, nothing to plug. I just appreciate everyone's time and you sharing their knowledge. It's always a good lesson learned for me, because you always have time to learn new things. So I think for me, just thank you.
And you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. Emre, what about you?
I can unmute myself. I want to promote Dremio. I think we're doing some amazing advancements on preparing, especially for if you're interested in AI platforms, preparing your data, and then we create a unified analytics data lakehouse. And if you're interested, Dremio.com. I think you're gonna like it. And yeah, other than that, huge thanks for this opportunity to talk about it. And then I learned a lot from the experts in the panel. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Next up is David.
Hey, everybody. I am a public servant, so I will send you to CISA.gov. We've got some very interesting things. We've published guidelines for responsible AI and for securing AI. Through Lisa Einstein, our chief AI officer. We've also recently, through the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, JCDC, we have published the results of a red team that we've done, a red team exercise, focused solely on AI. I think that's interesting reading, and it helps inform folks of the journey there. And all I would tell you is, collaborate with us. In my organization, I try to tell folks we're building the engine, but you all are the fuel. I can't run the engine without you. So I'm happy to hear from anybody. I'm on LinkedIn. Let me know your ideas. And I also run, I was telling one of my colleagues, I also run the AI community of practice for DHS and for the cybersecurity service. And I'm always looking for folks who want to come in and share. So I'm just happy to be here and happy to be serving you all. Thank you.
Appreciate the kind words. Everyone's been so welcoming. I love it. Mark, final words of the night.
Well, I want to thank all our panelists. Great information. These are always great events. I appreciate that. We are a strategic consulting firm. We don't sell any products or take any referral fees. As I mentioned, we work with many corporations, nonprofits, public sector organizations, helping them set up AI governance programs, everything from AI governance policies, integrating that with privacy requirements, helping them set up processes, helping them ensure that they're managing risks and it's executable. We also do a lot of work, and we've been doing this for more than 20 years, around records management, information governance, data security classification, and really marrying those policies and processes and technology to get something that works and is compliant and is defensible and moves the business forward. And so we do that. And we also offer, I spend a good part of my week, we do virtual in-house seminars. If you've got a group of people that are thinking about using AI, and we do an AI governance seminar, why AI governance, what's involved, who involved, and a lot of our clients have used this as a way of getting everybody together. And so we do no charge for virtual in-house AI governance seminars, really talking about what's involved and what other organizations doing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, one and all, again, for your time. That will do it for this panel and our cybersecurity coverage. But, of course, if you'd like to see even more, we encourage you to visit our website, insightjam.com. You're always on destination for technology needs and research. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for panel highlights, weekly podcasts, expert advice, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned tomorrow. Our coverage begins anew at 9:30 a.m. Eastern as we kick off the Human Edge Day with Eric Kavanaugh's keynote on preparing for the AI overthrow. You don't want to miss that. But for now, for this group, thank you very much for watching and listening, and have a great night. Bye-bye. For video highlights, replays, and more, visit insightjam.com.